You picked a tomato this morning. It was warm from the sun, heavy in your palm, slightly imperfect. One side was a little greener than the other. There was a small scar near the stem where a branch had pressed against it while it grew. You brought it inside, sliced it at the counter, and ate it with nothing but salt. And something happened that does not happen when you eat a tomato from the store. Something you have felt 100 times but never examined closely. The tomato tasted different. Not just better, different. Like food is supposed to taste. Like food used to taste. Like the distance between your hand and your mouth was exactly the right distance for food to travel. That feeling is not imagination. It is not nostalgia. It is not the placebo effect of effort making food taste better. Something measurably different happens in your brain when you eat food you grew yourself compared to food you bought from a shelf. And the implications go far beyond flavor. Today, you're going to learn what growing your own food does to your brain. Not to your body, not to your nutrition, not to your wallet. To your brain, the organ that processes everything you experience. And the changes are more profound than you would expect from a tomato. The first thing that changes is your relationship with anxiety, and it changes at a level you do not consciously control. Dr. Andrew Jones, a researcher at the University of Michigan, studies the psychology of food security. His findings are direct. Even mild food insecurity, the quiet background feeling that access to food depends on systems you do not control, triggers a chronic low-grade stress response. You do not need to be hungry. You do not need to be poor. You just need to live in a world where your food arrives through a supply chain you cannot see, managed by companies you do not know, transported across distances you cannot fathom, and priced by forces you do not understand. That is enough. The background hum of dependence registers in the nervous system as vulnerability, and vulnerability, at the autonomic level, produces anxiety. When you grow your own food, even a small portion of it, that signal changes. Your brain receives direct evidence, not theoretical, not verbal, but physical, tangible, edible evidence that you can feed yourself. The tomato in your hand is proof. The shelf of preserves is proof. The freezer full of beans and squash is proof. Each piece of evidence lowers the baseline anxiety that food dependence creates, not to zero. You're not feeding your entire family from the garden, but the signal shifts from completely dependent to partially capable. And that partial shift in perceived self-sufficiency produces a measurable reduction in background stress. This is why a full pantry shelf feels like more than food storage. It feels like safety, because your nervous system is reading it as exactly that. The second change happens at the neurochemical level and involves the most complete reward cycle your brain can experience. Dr. Kelly Lambert at the University of Richmond documented that the human brain evolved a reward circuit specifically designed for the cycle of physical effort producing tangible sustenance. Plant, tend, harvest, eat. This is the cycle your brain was optimized for over hundreds of thousands of years. Every stage of it triggers a specific neurochemical response. Planting triggers anticipatory dopamine. Tending triggers sustained engagement and serotonin from soil contact. Harvesting triggers a dopamine spike from visible, tangible reward. Eating what you harvested triggers the full completion of the circuit, satiation paired with the knowledge that your effort directly produced your survival. No other activity in modern life completes this entire circuit. Exercise gives you effort without tangible output. Cooking gives you transformation without origin. Buying food gives you satiation without effort. Only growing and eating your own food runs the complete sequence that your brain was designed to reward. When you eat that tomato you grew, the satisfaction you feel is not just about taste, it is about completion. Your brain is registering the closure of a loop that has been open since March, since you pressed the seed into the soil and started the cycle. 5 months of anticipation, effort, attention, and care closed in a single bite. The depth of that satisfaction is incomparable to any purchased meal, not because the food is objectively superior, but because the neurochemical reward is fundamentally different. The third change is cognitive, and it explains why people who grow food tend to think more clearly about systems in general. A garden that produces food is a complex adaptive system. You are managing soil chemistry, water schedules, sunlight exposure, pest pressure, companion planting interactions, crop rotation, seasonal timing, and weather variability, all simultaneously, all in real time, all with incomplete information. And you are doing this not in a spreadsheet, but with your hands, adjusting as you go based on what you see, smell, and feel. This kind of thinking, managing a complex system through direct sensory feedback and iterative adjustment, is the highest form of practical intelligence. Research at the University of Cambridge on cognitive complexity has shown that people who regularly manage complex natural systems develop greater cognitive flexibility, stronger pattern recognition, and better decision-making under uncertainty. These are not gardening skills. These are life skills. And the garden builds them more efficiently than any abstract training program because the feedback is immediate, the stakes are real, and the consequences are edible. The person who manages a productive vegetable garden is practicing systems thinking every day. They are reading inputs, predicting outputs, adjusting variables, and responding to feedback in real time. And this cognitive practice transfers directly to how they manage their health, their finances, their relationships, and their work. The garden is not a break from thinking. It is a training ground for the kind of thinking that matters most. The fourth change operates at the deepest level, and it has to do with your sense of identity. In the modern economy, your value is defined by what you produce for others. Your salary, your title, your performance reviews all measure your usefulness to an employer or market. This creates a fragile identity. If the job disappears, who are you? If the market changes, what are you worth? Your sense of self is dependent on external systems that you do not control. Growing your own food creates a second identity that is entirely self-referential. You are someone who can sustain life, not theoretically, practically. You have done it. The food is on the table, you grew it. This identity does not depend on a boss, a market, a brand, or an algorithm. It depends on soil, seeds, water, and your own hands. And because it is self-generated, it is more stable, more durable, and more psychologically grounding than any professionally derived identity. Research by Russell Belk on the concept of extended self showed that the objects and environments we actively create become part of our identity in ways that purchased objects never do. The garden you built, the food you grew, the meals you prepared from your own harvest, these are extensions of yourself that no layoff can remove. When you eat food you grew, you're not just consuming calories, you're consuming evidence of your own capability. And that evidence, accumulating daily, season after season, builds a foundation of self-worth that is independent of anything the external world can give or take. The fifth change is the one that connects everything and explains why growing food feels different from every other productive activity. When you bite into that tomato, warm from the sun, imperfect and alive with flavor, your brain is simultaneously processing reduced food security anxiety, completed effort reward cycle, cognitive engagement with a complex system, reinforced self-identity, and the direct sensory pleasure of eating something real. 5 psychological and neurological processes, all activated in a single moment by a single bite. Of something your hands grew from a seed. No restaurant meal does this, no grocery store purchase does this, no meal delivery service does this. Not because the food is worse, because the brain circuitry that responds to self-grown food was built over 200,000 years of evolution for exactly this experience. And no amount of convenience can replicate what the full cycle delivers. So when someone asks you why you bother growing food when you could just buy it, the answer is not about money or freshness or organic certification. The answer is that growing your own food does something to your brain that buying food cannot. It reduces background anxiety. It completes the oldest reward circuit in your neurology. It trains your mind to manage complexity. It builds an identity that nothing external can erode. And it connects you through the full sensory experience of eating what you grew to a version of yourself that the modern world almost erased. You are not growing tomatoes. You are growing a brain that works the way it was supposed to. If this is the first time you are here and you recognized yourself in what you just heard, subscribe. This channel was made for people like us. And tell me in the comments, what is the first thing you ever grew and ate from your own garden? What did it taste like? Not the flavor, the feeling? I want to hear.